Call the meeting to order. First item, Jeremy, I want to thank you for giving us this pamphlet. I like that. Opportunity, and they're looking into it?
I'm working with Jay to figure out if it's the right option.
Yep. So I like that.
Good.
We needed that. It saves money.
It would. It's a matching grant. Pardon me. It's a matching grant, so, I know. I was projecting. I've been practicing today. It's a opportunity, since the resource officer wasn't able to be part of the formal plan, this could potentially have some help with that, so. It's a 25% match, so if it works, we definitely would need to find some means of working this in.
So next item is citizens' comments, and we have two people listed. So Ben, we're going to let you go first. You have to come through the mic, so the public can hear from you.
They don't know you, they can hear you without the mic yet.
That's right.
Yeah.
I can stand in the back. I got a big mouth. Hey, well, first of all, I just wanted to thank you guys for all the hard work you do. And really, I've served on a number of boards. You too, Jeremy.
That is a recipe for disaster.
And, I guess the reason that I wanted to come in tonight was basically, just touch on what I'm hearing, and if I'm understanding it right, this whole proficiency-based, diploma. And when my daughter Kate, who's my third one to come through the system, arrived, she was going to be in the test class for that, the class of 2021. Okay. And at that point, my understanding was, that was a state-mandated thing, okay? And I'm going to tell you something. I grew up in Montgomery County, Maryland, so I'm from away, and we were the crucible of experimentation when I was a kid, okay? Some of it was good, some of it was bad, okay? What I will say, and this is really my concern, is that any change that comes along, there's a lot of resistance, I understand that, okay? But my other feeling of it is generally speaking, that anything that comes down as a state mandate, okay, probably, for the most part, hasn't been thought out that well, okay? There might be some good aspects of it, there might be some bad. And my understanding with this is that it originally came in as a state mandated item. Now the state has backed off, okay? Some other folks like Yarmouth and so forth have backed off it as well, okay? And quite frankly, there's a lot of concern, from parents that have their kids going into college. How are they going to look at this? What is it going to be like, okay? And the fact is, okay, as far as I'm concerned, and this may be a poor analogy, okay, if you're playing a sport, okay, we're not doing anything to improve the athletes or the playing fields or whatever. All we're talking about is the scorekeeping, okay? And in my mind, from what I understand with all this, it's going to cost a lot of money to do this, okay? In one shape, form, or another. And if you're using resources, if they're not focusing on improving these kids' academic career, okay, and in my mind, perhaps I'm missing something, but indeed, if it's just another method of scorekeeping, grading, or whatever, and it's not being understood, from what I understand from a number of colleges, that's not another problem, okay? So anyway, I guess what I just wanted to say in a nutshell is I really would like you guys to consider the fact that if indeed the state has backed off, and there's a lot of other people backing off, that instead of just forcing our way through this and continuing, because it's going to cost a lot of money and it's going to definitely derail a lot of teachers' efforts to teach, okay, that we should consider backing out of it as well before we even jump into it. And perhaps as you go forward, there may be some good aspects that you can incorporate into the program you got, okay? People come into the Maranacook School District because they want to be in Maranacook, okay? My understanding is Poland is one of the only ones that are running this, okay? I've got some friends that live in Poland. They'd much rather be in the Maranacook School District, okay? So I think it's nice to have people say, we want to be like Maranacook and we want to be here. okay? And I understand change is inevitable, but I think that perhaps we might be caught up in the inertia of the state mandate, and perhaps as the board, you guys might be able to consider another way, an alternative out of this, okay? That's it. That's it, that's all. All right?
Thank you very much, Ben.
Thank you.
Nice work.
Thank you.
Stephanie is next.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Rio, and I'm a mom of 2 teenagers. Taylor graduated last year, and Trevor is the experimental class. So I'm worried about that, first and foremost. I also am a real estate broker, and one of the first questions I get when there's a family moving into town is, how's the school system? And I've had lots of questions about regarding this program and whether our school has implemented this program, because they do not want it. Just hearing that from parents that potentially want to move here and choose a different school system because of that, because I have to tell them they're thinking about it, they're trying to get it in, and they're like, we don't want anything to do with it. So to me, that's a huge concern, not getting new families moving to town. So if we could just maybe think about that aspect of it, and whether we want to push new families out of here. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Stephanie. Anybody else who didn't sign the paper? Okay, moving on.
Oh,
You've got one in the back.
Hi, my name is Christopher Montagna. I didn't expect to be standing up here, but a few folks asked me to speak. I am in opposition to changing the grading system. My concern is not from the student standpoint, but from the parent standpoint. When I look at my children and can see grades and see where they stand educationally, I know where they're passing, where they're failing. If I look at just a 4 or a 3 or a 2, I really don't know how to gauge them as a parent. And my concern with this program is, excuse me, is it could be taking the parents out of the equation. Education should be a family affair, not just an agreement between students and teachers, but the parents have to be involved. And my concern is with this new format, how am I going to gauge my involvement in the process? So that's my 2 cents for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Robin Graziano. I'm a teacher here of 19 years teach math at the high school. And I just came to listen because from things that I've been hearing and seeing on Facebook, I think there's a general confusion about the differences between proficiency-based diploma and proficiency-based grading. And I think that we need to be educating the community and ourselves a little bit better as to what the difference is. One proficiency-based diploma, the way that it stands right now, is that every student in the high school has to, at least for the experimental group, the class of 2021, and then beyond, has to meet the standards that we have set aside as priority standards. And that sounds rather scary, I agree with you. And I think as teachers, we probably would also like to see that changed. That's the diploma. You know, these are the things. We're no longer, it's not a credit-based diploma, it's a proficiency-based diploma, so you have to meet these standards. Right now, all you have to do is get a 65 or better to get credit in your class. So there's quite a difference between the two. I think what we would like to see is something different, that it's not proficiency-based, but passing a class might be proficiency-based. and that we would then take an average or something like that to determine whether the student meets certain standards. And also, we'd like to limit the number of standards. But that's the difference between what we have right now. What we have right now is a credit-based, and students earn credits. And what is going to happen for the class of 2021 right now, according to our policy, is that they will have to meet standards in order to graduate. The other part of this is there is proficiency-based grading, which is a whole other ball of wax. There are many different ways to grade proficiency. Some schools use 1 to 4. The one that we know the most is the 1 to 4 that everybody's been talking about. And 1 to 4 just clarifies for the student and for the teacher what the progression of learning is for the student. Lots of people will say, well, 1 doesn't meet expectations. But if we're going to be really clear on a rubric, a 1 should really say, what is it that the student is doing that's not meeting expectations? A 2 partially meets expectations, and so what, again, is the student doing that's partially getting them to meet expectations? And a 3 is they meet the expectations, and it should be very clear what the students are, how the students are meeting it. And a 4, of course, is then exceeding. So we should have some carrot to get kids to want to exceed the standard and go, and oftentimes it's a higher level of thinking. It's not just getting every problem right. It's maybe something that we haven't taught the kids, and someone is smart enough to figure it out because they're able to synthesize all the parts of the content that they just learned. There's conversation, there's lots of debate in our school whether we should go 1 to 4. I personally like 1 to 4. I use it as an interventionist because it helps me see a progression of learning from my students that come to me. They're mostly the struggling students, and I know exactly where I'm leading them towards. The other option, again, is the 0 to 100, which is what we're all traditionally familiar with. There's conversation about doing a dual grading system, 1 to 4 and 0 to 100, where we grade on a rubric 1 to 4, and then we come up with some conversion. I know schools that do that. I was just personally at a conference last week, and they say making a conversion is really difficult. And actually, it's highly not to be recommended. It's highly not recommended to have a conversion because they're not convertible. In terms of, I've been doing a bunch of research, and if anybody wants any of these articles, they can always reach out to me. I'll be happy to send them to you. I have a bunch of PDFs. Colleges and universities have get transcripts from all over the world. We're not the only transcript they're getting, and what they do on their own is they already convert what we're sending them into a 1 to 4 scale. So all we need to do is be very clear about what our expectations are of our students. We need to have a really good profile. We need to have clarity about our transcript. And then schools will figure it out. All the studies that I've looked at say that no school that has been asked will ever make our 1 to 4 system a disadvantage for admission because, again, they already convert everything into their own scales so that they normalize it, basically. And so they can have a pretty clear idea of what the student does. And the 1 to 4 scale on its own isn't what is the sole indicator for acceptance at a university. They're pretty holistic. They're looking for other things other than just 1 to 4. And I've lost track of where I was going. I just really wanted to kind of make a little clarification. I hope that helped a little bit. I have a bunch of studies that have been done by New England Schools, Secondary Schools Consortium. I have a study done by the Greater Schools program, the Greater Schools Partnership. They all basically say the same thing. Your kids, and scholarships too, that was the other thing. Scholarships from schools will not be affected because, again, they do the same thing. They normalize the grades, and they would actually prefer us to give them a GPA. Whatever we decide to do, however we want to convert it, they would prefer that we do it because it leaves less guessing for them to how to do it. So I just wanted to let you know that that's what I've come up with so far. I know it's a really hot topic, and from what I've heard, there seems to be a lot of confusion about the differences between the two, and just wanted to clarify it. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jill Colvin. I have 3 students in the district, and I'm from away, admittedly, as well, and moved in here from a district out of state that had faced this challenge in transition along with some of the neighboring districts. And, you know, if we do head the way towards provisionally based education, there's 2 caveats that I'd hope that we look to avoid. One is that on the 1 to 4 scale, it's expected that people reach proficiency, but where we came from, what we found was that when students got to that level 3, that was kind of the end of the road, that you were sort of expected to be really exceptional if you were going to get to a 4, like something beyond what's taught in the classroom. So students who are really strong students would become complacent. They'd get to 3, and the rest of the classroom's focusing on trying to get to 3, and that's it. You know, why do I want to try harder if I'm not going to get to a 4, when admittedly they would say, you know, it's the exceptional kid that's going to get to the 4. The other issue that, you know, as someone in the workforce right now, that I have big issues with this proficient or standards-based model is that there's kind of a lack of deadlines. Like, it seems like in most of the districts, you have to reach the proficiency, but kind of on your own timeline. Well, you know, you didn't pass this test. That's okay, you can retake it, or you can show us proficiency in other ways. And so I just really worry that, you know, we want to create workers who can go out and get a job done. And if they're in a workforce someday and, you know, they don't deliver whatever the food on time to the table, you know, the clients or the patrons aren't going to say, well, that's okay. You know, you can get my French fries in an hour. You know, I'll be waiting. So I think, you know, we want to have a healthy, strong community. And I think we've heard from the realty standpoint that, you know, if we jump too fast into this, we might be decreasing property values. We want to create people who can be self-sufficient in the workforce. And if we have, you know, graduating classes where they're going to be expecting that deadlines and things don't really matter, that's a problem. And then lastly, you know, really important to me is we want to create people who have this passion, this self-integrity for the learning that they can do themselves. And if I'm in, you know, I would probably be the same way. If I'm in a classroom and I reach the level 3 and great, my job's done. You know, why not coast? Why not just fall asleep or look at my smartwatch that, you know, I can see every text coming through on? I want, you know, to be in a district where students who maybe don't have that innate ability to spring from curriculum are kind of guided that way. You know, hey, we want you to be able to get a 4. We don't want to say that that's our, you know, 4% of the district that gets a 4. And then our oldest daughter, she's in college now, and the little I've talked to colleges, I've been told that in these standards and proficiency-based districts, it's the standardized tests that become pretty important. That, sure, you know, maybe they're trying to convert it to the old GPAs or whatever, but it sounds like they might be placing more importance on standardized tests. So I worry a little bit about test, and I haven't looked into this at all, but I worry a bit about test optional schools, how they would look on this. So thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, additions to the agenda from the board. Seeing none, moving on.
I move to approve the minutes of April 3rd, 2019.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? I just,
Abstained.
okay, budget workshop update.
So if you look in your folders, you'll find the top copy, which is the summary copy, and you'll see it dated, identified as the 5th draft for tonight's meeting. If you go down to the grand total line again and follow it all the way across, the percent increase to the budget at this point is 3.75%, which is $671,223.63. So that's kind of where we are right now. So very quickly, the next page, the second page, the green sheet is the revenue updates up to this point, based on that number that's on the front page. So if you go to the back of that second green paper, you'll see, again, the adjustments have been made based on that number going across. And then it would be the fourth page is the adult and community education budget, the expenditures, and then, of course, the revenues that go along with that. And we included the grants that go with that, because, again, we will be hopefully voting on that number tonight. So their request is for fiscal year 2019-20 is $205,412. And then, of course, you can see the total revenue line matches that as well. So kind of what's coming in is the same as what's going out. And then the summary of how we got to that is on pages 5, 6, and 7. So it is important to note the changes in health. The health was a big bonus to us. We came in at 0%, which means absolutely no change, which is fantastic for us. Not many school districts, talking to other superintendents, there weren't a whole lot of districts that got a 0%, so that was pretty fantastic for us. So you can see what requests have remained in the budget going forward. And then I'm going to jump to page 7 to explain how we got to that 3.75%. So under the middle school, high school co- and extracurricular coaching position, the robotics is included in that. We did cut back in the robotics. We also did cut out the halftime maintenance position. There was quite a bit of discussion around that. So again, that has been eliminated from the budget, along with the maintenance contracts, the keyless entry and the painting are the ones I want to focus on, where we cut back on some of the painting and then again took out the keyless entry system to go along with that. We did have a little kind of surprise that was handed to us. I did email you guys today to let you know about that. We had a technology integrator position that we went an 80-20 split with Fayette on. And that 80-20 split was 80% was us, which was basically 4 days a week. And then Fayette paid 1 day a week, or amounts to about 20% of that person's or that position's salary. And they did decide to back out of that. So I did fold that into the budget just because I was like, I want to account for that position. So I did fold that into the budget along with the other cuts that we kind of cut out. I did fold that piece back in, and I'm not sure if you guys are going to want to discuss that going forward as to how we handle that. I was not, I'll say it this way, I was not real impressed with the way I was notified about that from Fayette, because I feel like they had made an arrangement and they backed out on their arrangement. But of course, we have to, in my mind, take care of our people. I do believe that technology integrator, we've got more than enough work for that person to stay busy. Today was an excellent example of what was going on in that, with the work that was going on today. I was in Mount Vernon and happened to go in, and they were working with robotics, and he was working with the teacher in the classroom using the, I forget what they're called, they're round little robots that move around and right, dash, yeah. And he was working right with the teachers, and they were doing an integrated unit. They then proceeded to show me some videos that they had made that focused around science vocabulary words, and the robot was moving around against a green screen, but that was then included with the vocabulary words that were going on, that they were learning. So it was a really neat project to watch, and the integrator was in the classroom the whole time with the teacher and giving the teacher support, troubleshooting, but also helping the kids, and it was just really, it was a really fun, educational, very interactive approach to what was going on there. So in my mind, knowing that, my proposition going forward is that one day that we'll pick up will be, that person will be moved, or that position would be moved from 1 day in Manchester and 1 day in Reedfield to 1.5 in Manchester and 1.5 in Reedfield. And again, I believe we have a lot of work that they can do in the classroom with that. And I did talk with Diane about it, because obviously it affects her department. And it was a little bit of a shock to us, so we folded that in. So that's kind of where we are right now and how we got to that. And I do want to make clear that on the front page on number 5, that we did add back in that Reedfield Elementary classroom teacher that Mr. Boston had been advocating for, so that grade 5 could be split into 2 grades. So that's why the number went from a 3.5 something up to a 3.75. So we tried to balance things off as much as we could and offset as much as we could to be able to do that. So at this point, discussions from you guys about
Boston Lee's smiling.
now he is.
Any discussion? Okay, so now we got to vote on the RSU budget as presented tonight. There's a motion.
I make a motion to vote on 2019-2020 RSU 38 budget in the amount of $18,591,474. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Move on to the next one.
I move to vote on the 2019-2020 RSU 38 adult education budget in the amount of $205,412.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? See, none, moving on. Roll call.
I move that the vote entitled "Vote to Call and Approve the Warrants for the Budget Meeting and the Validation Referendum and to Authorize the Notice of Amounts Adopted" be approved in form presented to this meeting, and that a copy of said vote be included with the minutes of this meeting. Vote to call and approve the warrant, do I read that? Votes to call and approve the warrants for the budget meeting and the validation referendum, and to authorize the notice of amounts adopted.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay.
So I'll have you guys hang out right there.
Hang on.
We're actually going to sign the
Can't
warrants
leave.
right now, so.
We got to sign the paper.
There's going to be 5 coming around, and everyone needs to sign them, 1 for each town, and then 1 that stays with the RSU in the central office, so.
Caleb, is that a legal blue pen? No?
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure. No, I get it.
Drew's evaluation.
Yeah.
Hey, Gary, can I just ask a quick question?
Go ahead.
Is there a way, when the towns go to vote, is there a way that we can put in like a little like survey with that on different topics that might be curious, the overall temperature of the towns on? I'm just curious
Yeah.
if that's something that we could do. as
I
far as-
don't think it is, simply because we tie it to the town elections, and I think there would probably be an added cost to that, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I don't
Why
know
don't
if
we look
anyone
into that,
here,
Adam,
yeah,
for you?
that's a good question.
I don't think you can actually put it on the ballot.
It can't be on the
but
ballot.
There may be something that we could, I don't know, we can check.
We'll look into that. Yep.
I move that we go into executive session to discuss evaluation of Superintendent James Charette pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056A.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?